Hello, hello. Hi, Brandon. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wakes up and sometimes they're just like, I need to wear sparkles today. But I did, so here we are. Welcome. We've got some folks trickling in. I want to welcome you all to our second Women in Data panel. I'm so proud to be up here amongst these incredible folks. If you were here last year, well, actually, let me introduce myself because Brandon did too. But I am Meg Pittman. I am the Chief People Officer at DBT Labs. Like I said, this is the second year that we've hosted this event. Last year, if you were here, we had this meal. We hit capacity so fast, we were actually turning folks away. If you went to the keynote this morning too, two of our panelists, Yeri and Faith, who were totally on fire this morning, they crushed it up here last year as well. And so it just reminded us that people are craving this conversation and they're craving connection like this. And we wanted to take a moment, create another conversation for us and talk about influence specifically. And I think conversations like this with these folks are really important because they're honest and they talk about the messiness and the human side of how we build influence, how we ultimately shape our careers in data in anywhere that we're at. So that's what we're going to talk about today. My personal opinion is that influence is both powerful and at the same time can be totally misunderstood. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about your title or level or what you put on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is great. We all use it. But it's not about that. It's really about how you show up. It's about the trust that you build. It's about the moments that you choose to speak up or the moments that you choose to listen. It's about the example that we set when we think no one is listening. And all of that turns into the quiet credibility of turning ideas into movement that we all build. So in a world where work is constantly changing at very, very fast and uncomfortable rates at times, influence is really about how we make things better from wherever each of us is sitting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm stoked. I'm so grateful to be moderating this session too. This is not a solo pursuit. That's why we're here. We're in this together, and each of us are going to grow by learning from each other, hearing each other's stories, and building connections at the end of it. So my panel is incredible. They're talented. They're so kind. My hope is that you walk away with two things today. One, really practical ideas of what you can implement when you walk out these doors. I know each of them have said things over the past couple of weeks that I've already written on Post-its or quoted to the people in my life already. And two, you have a stronger sense of connection. You get to know folks, both the panelists, myself, everyone in this room. We're going to have plenty of opportunity for that. So I'm excited to dig in with you more. At the end of the day, this is really the best part of my work. It's about creating access. And sessions like this really create more access for more folks because I think influence should not be held by a few, but it really is best when shared and built together. At the end of this, we are going to have plenty of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions or things that you want to know more of, don't hesitate to jot it down. I'll leave plenty of space to pass the mic around at the end. And then afterwards, we also do have a networking session. So with that, I'm going to start having panelists introduce themselves. Paige.
Awesome. Thanks, Meg. Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Berry. I'm a lead data analyst on the internal data team at DBT Labs.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pooja Crahen. I'm a principal analytics engineer at Okta. I'm thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Lesley Greene. I lead our customer solutions at DBT Labs.
And I'm Elizabeth Peters, VP of Data at 2U.
Awesome. So with that, I want to start by talking about a point in our careers where we had a shift in perspective, mindset, or skills that really helped us grow and redefine what good looked like. There wasn't a single definition. And Paige, I've had the privilege of working with you for a few years now. I'd love if you could start.
Sure. So I've been doing data work for over 20 years, but I'm self-taught. So I've learned everything I know on the job. And that meant there was a lot of imposter syndrome through most of my career. And one of the things that I did to deal with that is I dove into perfectionism. I felt like if I knew 100% of what I was trying to do, if I could trust the data 100%, if I was like prepared to answer every question the stakeholder could possibly answer, then that would give me credibility that I felt like I didn't have otherwise. Well, that ended up meaning that it took a really long time sometimes for me to deliver. And over time, I would miss opportunities. I'd deliver an answer and the business decision had already been made because it had taken me too long. So something I've had to let go of is that perfectionism, and just to realize that, I can actually deliver faster, and it doesn't have to be 100%. If I can be honest on like, I'm 70% confident in this answer, but is that good enough for you to make the decision? And yeah, often that's enough. And then the other thing that I've had to let go of is that I was really digging in on being unbiased. I had to be I didn't know the business, so I had to just deliver the numbers and not bias the stakeholder in any way. And over time, I've realized I've actually learned a lot about the business. I understand, I have access to the data, I know what questions everyone's asking, and I have opinions. I have been able to develop opinions because of that expertise. And so letting go of that fear of biasing and actually being able to share the opinions that I've developed has been a way that I've grown.
From my perspective and growing in my career as a data leader is they tell you often in management trainings the transition from an individual contributor to a manager is one of the hardest ones to do. You have to, and that's definitely something I experience as well, letting go of being able to jump in and do code, but really focusing on enabling your team and guiding and mentoring them to kind of solve those same problems. So what they don't tell you is the next step in that is now having to lead other teams of tools you've never touched before and managing the budgets and managing kind of the strategy behind those things. And so one thing, my secret is I personally have never used dbt. So I am sitting here on the stage at this conference having never used this tool, but I have to know how it fits in the strategy of my org, within our business, and be able to advocate for it. And I was thinking, sitting in the keynote sessions today, it's lots of really cool things, and I could empathize with the excitement from my team and the excitement from everybody here who's using these tools, and understand and even feel for myself oh, I want to go dig into that, but being okay with that is something I'm not supposed to do in the position I'm in. The other area I really had to focus on and keep a perspective on is the boundaries, both of my own, the technical limitations of my own knowledge, and know when I had to bring in somebody else for my team or somebody else within the organization who had more perspective and expertise in that area, but also the boundaries between these tools. Because that's kind of I'm the glue that holds those things together, and having to understand how they fit together and drive the strategy and move our business forward is a big change that I had to make and understand what good looks like.
I don't think anyone talks enough about sometimes when you grow in your career, you have to become so much more of a generalist and you stop becoming as much of an expert at certain things or tools as people on your team, but you still need to lead them effectively. It's like a teeter-totter and balancing that sometimes, so I get that deeply. I think that leads really well into our next question of there are going to be times where your technical expertise, while incredible, won't be enough on its own to be effective as a leader or to build influence. I'm curious what else some folks did to lean on to make an impact. And Pooja, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Yeah, so influence in technical data roles doesn't always come from presenting dashboards or shiny new features. For me personally, it has really come from leaning on people through building trust and relationships. I think, whether it's being the glue between analysts and engineers, or it's helping people connect the dots between raw data and business outcomes, I think technical brilliance doesn't matter much if the right people don't understand your work or support it. So now on the back-end team, I've also noticed that I've had to really ground myself on sharing and being honest about my knowledge, best practices, and standards, so I can scale that impact collectively with my team. And now I'm at a place where, because people trust my thought process and the outcomes that it'll create, people are more able to adopt the foundations and systems that I'm creating, but it can also now outlast me. So I'm able to drive a lot of that impact through consistency in standards and guardrails that I'm helping set at the platform level. So I learned this pretty early on at Okta that, to convert this technical expertise into this wider organizational impact, I had to really, really change my mindset from being a builder to be a multiplier, to be that amplifier that people really needed.
I really like that. I think the idea of the glue work that we often do in these roles is so important. You mentioned kind of being the glue between the analysts. And I think that comes out in lots of different ways in the organization. So I think for me, when I realized that leaning into some of my softer skills and that softer side of the work was really powerful. Like, we all have the base foundation of the technical skills. That's what gets you in the room, right? That's what gets you into the roles in the first place. But the people who really, really drive more impact are the people that are able to lean into being those connectors between either the questions and the technical work that needs to be done, or being the glue between different parts of the business. And that's what lets you, like you were saying, become a multiplier and really lean into those things. So I think it's really important to think about not just how can you be the best at the technical skills, but how do you then connect that to the rest of the business and bring people together.
I love the idea of being a multiplier and also creating impact through others that outlasts you. Like, there will be a moment each of us step out of the roles we're in or the companies we're at, and your legacy can still be felt and they can still be stronger because of that. I think on the same note of, building credibility, there have been moments in all of our careers where we said no to something or we decided not to do something. I'm curious, how did that choice shape your influence or credibility? Paige, maybe, or yeah, you want to start with you?
Yeah, sure. It can be kind of challenging so I'm on a team with a bunch of really empathetic people. We care so much about our stakeholders. We want to give them what they're asking for just because we're like, oh, we want to help you. We want to help you with getting your work done. But so often what ends up happening is there's something underneath what stakeholders are asking for, and we have to get to that. And sometimes when you even get to that, you realize that what they need is something different, or maybe that's actually not something that works to do right then. Perhaps it means if we were to do what they're requesting, we wouldn't be able to do something else that has more impact sooner. And so being able to do that and be able to do that well, sometimes it doesn't come easily. So a lot of times when I'm going to have a conversation with a stakeholder that essentially is I'm saying no or not right now, I will share that conversation that I'm having with the stakeholder with my team. I'll say, here's an example of where I'm telling the stakeholder not yet, and this is how I'm framing it, this is how I'm connecting it to our business goals right now. As a way to help show as an example, this is how you can do that yourselves, or if you think you're going to have a conversation like that with a stakeholder coming up, let me know. We can try some things. I can help you shape the message. We can role play, whatever you need, because that sometimes it just doesn't come easy necessarily saying no, but when you do, it means that you can then do something that's more impactful, and often that actually is another way to build trust.
I think I really like that idea of it building trust. I think that saying no is also often a way that you really build credibility, because by saying no, you're showing the confidence to be prioritizing and to be saying what you think is more important. I definitely found before my role here, I was leading a data team, and at first we wanted to be helpful. You think that you're building credibility by all the great help that you're giving to everybody. But that means that they're driving the direction of the work that you're doing, and they're the ones that are deciding what impact you have. But by working with my team to be able to say no to more things, and I'm not an improv person, so for me it's not yes and, it's no and, because then you can just say no, we're not going to do that because it's going to allow us to do these other things that we want to do that will have more impact, that will drive more change. And I think after I moved over to DBT, I was on the sales side. I learned the same thing is true when we were working with customers or I was selling to a new prospect. By saying no to somebody, by telling them why what they're doing isn't working and why something else would be better, it really just very quickly builds builds that credibility with people. Austin, our CRO, always says, no is the most powerful word in the English language, and I think it's really true. Like when you're willing to say no and stand by it, people, they pay attention and they listen to that. So I think it's going away from that idea of saying yes to be helpful, instead just saying no so that you're driving the actual impact and you're deciding where you're spending your time.
I'm curious, Paige and Lesley, the idea of saying no, you mentioned, can be scary. And Pooja, right before this, you had said, people trust your thought process. It's almost like showing your math, or showing your work in math when we were all kids. I don't know if anyone does that anymore, but when you had to show your math with a pencil and paper. I'm curious, to get to the place of comfort in saying no, was there something you had to prove or demonstrate first that allowed you to do that with a higher degree of comfort or confidence?
That's a good one. I think there have been times when, I think sometimes you can, one of the areas that we sometimes have to say no is when we're asked to build another dashboard, say, for example. Another dashboard.
We would never.
And one of the things that's been really powerful about being able to say, maybe not another dashboard right this minute, is when we have been able to show as a data team that, hey, if we don't spend this week building this dashboard, but instead save some time to do some deeper analysis work and actually explore a question that maybe no one has asked us to, but that we know is going to be important because of all the other conversations we're hearing, then we've been able to bring insights and guidance to the business that as obviously becoming valuable. And when we can do that, then it's a little bit easier next time to say, hey, I know you're talking about wanting another dashboard, but we've really set aside this time to dig in deeper on this set of questions. And you saw what happened last time we did that and the value it brought. That's why we're going to do that instead of the dashboard this week.
I think just to add to that, I think people have a perception that saying no is bad that's not actually there. So my advice to everybody and anybody who's been on one of my teams, at some point I've probably told them to do this, is just try it. Just say no to something and see what happens, right? Probably you're gonna feel really good about it and feel confident, and that will then lead into other things. But I often have people on my teams that I'm like, okay, your job this week is to say no to something, and I'm going to ask you next week what it was. You just have to do it, and it becomes fun over time.
And I think for me, I agree with what Paige just said. I think it's when you say no, you have to almost always back that with the why, the why behind the no. So people, who are curious, and curiosity sparks interest, they would be more willing to trust that decision of saying that no.
Mm-hmm. I think so many of us are raised, and it's instilled in us to say yes, or to help, or to do the thing, or to make it happen. And I think, Lesley, I loved what you said of I told my team say no to one thing this week, and you set the expectation, and then you follow up next week of what did you say no to. I will start doing that. I think my team is chiming in on the webinar, so I'm going to ask them to. All right, let's go into it. I mentioned at the beginning of this, the world is changing so fast. That is not news to any of us, and it's also changing at such a rate that I think is new for all of us in our careers, irrespective of where we are. I'm curious how all of this evolution has really changed your point of view on how to effectively lead and empower the teams you're doing in this growingly global landscape, and with AI and technology evolving so much. And Elizabeth, I'd love to start with you on this.
Yeah, as we were preparing for this panel, I was actually in Cape Town for 2 weeks, and before that I was in India for 2 weeks. So I got back last Monday, and then now I'm here in Pacific time, and it's I don't even know what time zone this is. But because of that, I lead a team of almost 70 people from California to India. We're currently building our team in India, and so that's a 12.5-hour time difference right now, 13.5 on November 2nd, but who's counting? And so overlap is pretty much impossible, and it'll always be inconvenient for somebody. So I've had to really force myself and to think about how do we maximize the time we do have together, and think about ways to kind of work more asynchronously as well. So some things that like I've evolved to do over time, some of it is kind of how I manage my people and my teams. So as I was thinking about kind of my organization, trying to minimize the blast radius of like how many of us had to be involved in kind of this transitionary period and focus on having single points of entry for all things. So not all of us had to like go to every single meeting between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern time. And so people could actually sit down and do the work. That was the other thing, is like we still had work to get done while we were doing this. So some things that have really been helpful for me is using AI. Like I don't use it, I'm not developing and coding, but like using it to help my life. Gemini, we use Gemini and Google Meet has been like a game changer. Like I can go to meetings without actually going to the meetings and review things after the fact. I've also thinking about saying no. Something we've started to do is use like canned JIRA responses. So that enables kind of individuals on my team to like move more quickly, but also have a consistent way to kind of have those hard conversations, even if they're not comfortable with it. And then I've also done a lot of work to think about how do I set expectations for my team in a written way. So that way there's always something to come back to. Even if it's not fully complete or fully accurate, it's always something we can come back to reference to understand expectations and understand our goals and how what we are doing links back to those goals. And I've done a number of things like scheduled Slack messages to like make sure it gets to people at like a time zone appropriate time. I also have like stopped wasting my time typing up long Slack messages explaining things and just like make a video and like screen share and say like, this is what it's doing. If you have any questions, like we can talk tomorrow, pretty much is a new approach I've taken. So it's a lot of things related to people and then also thinking how do I make technology make this whole thing easier for everybody.
You know, speaking of global structures, like before COVID, I used to work in the office, like many of us here, I'm sure, and I used to see these well-dressed women and men, you know, being in conference rooms and taking up stages, filling the room with their voice. And back then, I really thought that leadership is about being in the room. But now, a decade later, and the global ecosystem that we're a part of, I've come to think that leadership was never about proximity. It's more about the clarity and intention that you bring into your role. And on the same lines of thought, I used to also think on the front-end team, when I was part of the front-end team, that dashboards were the pinnacle of impact because I thought that I could show influence, right? Like it came from what I could show. And as I moved to the back-end team, you know, with the evolution in technology that we're now seeing and the rise of AI, I'm quickly learning that that's where the leverage is. Like, that's where we're, you know, hard at work at Okta, strengthening our foundation, making sure that, you know, all of these humans who are across these different time zones and AI agents are now going to be operating off of context and not chaos. And then I think on the people side, it's just really back to basics. You know, it's fostering this culture of connection and collaboration, making sure that we're all speaking the same shared language. It may not be in words, but in data. And you know, just ensuring that these time zones don't really become barriers to decision making.
Elizabeth, I loved what you said about a single point of entry. And thinking about that in the people sense. And I think that really creates a one-team mentality too of trusting the person who is that point of entry to not only like, you know, engage in that conversation or that meeting in a way that like enables the entire group, but also to speak on behalf of them and to follow up appropriately. So it ensures shared goals too and everything. And Pooja, I love the context, not chaos thing. I was thinking of that earlier too in the keynote. Great, okay. I'd love to kind of wrap up our sort of like structured session here with one or two pieces of advice that each of you would give everyone in this room, anyone chiming in virtually too, that you've kind of learned in your own personal journey of building influence. What would those one or two pieces of advice be? And Paige, you're the lucky one to my left. We'll start with you.
Awesome. I would say be intentional about developing your own point of view and your own opinions. Like you are the only person with the set of experiences and knowledge that you have. So you bring something very unique. So, and being intentional about developing that is really powerful. I had somebody tell me once about influence, a thing that I never forgot, where it was like do it so that you're in the room even when you're not in the room, where this person would always have the same question that they always asked in meetings. And so the idea was that like, even if they weren't in that meeting, someone would say, well, if so-and-so were here, they would say this. And so I never forgot that. And this spring I was working with an engineering team, and we were, they were developing features, and I was trying to do reporting for the product managers. And every meeting I was like, okay, but where's the event tracking data? If I don't have the event tracking data, I can't do the metrics. Like, where's? So and there was this one morning where I wasn't at the meeting, and somebody told me later, like, you'll never guess, you weren't there, but somebody said, Paige was here. She'd say, where's the data? If we don't have event tracking data, we can't do the report. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've arrived. I did it.
You made
so,
it.
yeah, never forgot that.
Yeah, awesome. Pooja?
Yeah, and I think for me, I would say that so much of the imposter syndrome in women today comes from the constant chase. So, whether it's proving yourself over and over delivering, saying yes to everything, I think, so my first piece of advice here is to stop chasing and start attracting. Now, that doesn't mean you just sit back and relax. It just means you're more intentional about what you focus your energy on. So, you basically move that dialogue inward and focus more on confidence building, mastering your craft, things like that. So I think when you do that, your reliance on external validation really decreases and you become more stronger internally. So that's my first piece of advice. And I think if more women, embraced this mindset, we would be able to redefine how, that narrative of how influence is really built. The second piece of advice that I have is to finish what you start. So growing up, I came to the US from India 21 years ago. And I think my parents were being really opportunistic when they taught me this. Because I was new in the US, right? So I was like, okay, doing anything new is fun and exciting. That adrenaline rush that you have when you start something new is so fun. But over time, that excitement really fades. And the CEO of Fivetran today said that discipline is what kept the product going at Fivetran. And I think I have the same belief that, when motivation really fades, discipline jumps in. Your ability to push things through from start to finish makes you resilient. And I think that's what helps build true character. When you come out the other side, you are an unstoppable force of nature. And I think you're just not scared. You're more fearless in the way you live life and work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. My big piece of advice is to lean into your own strengths and figure out how to do whatever it is you're doing the way that is natural and fits you. I think that especially in technical roles, it can be really easy to show up at a new company, you're new to the role, and so you look at somebody who's been doing it already and you see them as like, oh, that's the way to do this. I see this a lot on our SA team. We would hire former data practitioners. There were people that had not done sales work before, and so they would look and see like, oh, Matt, that's the way that you're an SA. Like, I need to be like that person. And the people that are really, really successful are the ones that instead of trying to emulate somebody else or do it the way they do it, they lean into what's natural to them and where their strengths are. So my big advice here is like, do a little bit of introspection, talk to former bosses, talk to people you've worked with, right? Like, find out what other people say your strengths are, because often those are the things that you downplay, that you think are not special and are not going to help you be successful because it comes so naturally and so easy to you. But those are exactly the things that let you really excel. So talk to some other people, find out what they say your real strengths are, take a strengths finder test, and then lean into those. You can always have your opportunities things to work on. We all want to get better, but by really leaning into the things that are natural to you, it helps. That's what'll help you really kind of find more joy in the work that you're doing and naturally build that influence and leadership as a result.
From my perspective, I see influence is a lot about building connections as well. And we as data practitioners, we live in connecting disparate data and different disparate systems. You're literally joining different things together all of the time. Early on in my career, I found a lot of good things come out of kind of getting out of the data and getting out of the SQL and going and seeing how that connected to people kind of interacting with that technology or interacting with that data. So literally sitting next to somebody on our support team and like seeing them on a call or seeing them answer an email with a customer, and then how did that relate to Salesforce, and then go finding that data in our database and connecting that all the way back to like a dashboard that their manager used to kind of measure how the teams were doing. And so continuing to replicate that ability to connect to the data to people, and then also bringing the people together. So as I progress kind of further along, I would also give advice to kind of, you can see the problems of someone in marketing and then somebody on the sales team, and creating forums to bring those people together to talk about data and kind of make decisions together is a way to kind of create influence and like be known as somebody that brings people together and helps move things forward, especially as your team scale and scale globally.
Lesley, there was also one thing you had said to me earlier about becoming accidentally important that I loved, and if you're open to sharing more on.
Yeah, it's something that somebody at DBT Labs said to me recently, and I just like really latched onto it. I think that Pooja's Stop Chasing and Start Attracting is like a much more eloquent version of this. But I think that it's the same idea of, when you stop trying to chase the influencer, like you're thinking about trying to get the power, and instead you're just leaning into doing the things that you do well, always getting better, but like being in the place where you're confident and able to do what you want to do, you kind of accidentally become important for better and worse.
Yeah, and leaning into that I think is amazing. Okay, great. I'm going to open it up to the floor for some Q&A. I have some folks with mics, I believe. If you have a question, great. I've got one right up here in the front. We will hand you a mic. If you want to say your name and your question, and then if your question is for anyone in particular, please feel free to name them as well. Thanks, Michelle.
Hello? Okay.
Hi.
My name is Rachel Kurtz, and I guess my question is for all of you. In this day and age where like podcasts are just reigning supreme, are there any particular podcasts that you feel have helped, whether it's a podcast in general or like a particular episode that you feel really helped you kind of like step into your power and feel this influence? I know that's a pretty big question. And so.
Anyone you want to start, Elizabeth?
I struggle a lot listening to kind of data podcasts a lot, so I don't listen. I have many on my podcast list, but I don't listen to them, even though I need to have the discipline to do that. What I've started doing recently is with these global teams, I've started to find podcasts of news in those areas, and so I started founding a podcast on South African news, and that's given me like a lot of perspective on like for my Cape Town team, like what's going on in their world that they care about, and also gets me out of my bubble of like living here in like the chaos that we exist, but also understand that there's things that they care about as well. And just understanding like their culture and holidays. Like I know all the South African holidays, and I'm starting to learn all the Indian holidays as well. And understanding like what those mean in people's lives has helped me like kind of connect with my team more. And so that'd be something I would recommend.
I can talk about one, but it's a little bit weird because it's one I'm on, so I don't know what
I was going to call on you, and I was like, I'll let you say first.
So yeah,
I was really hoping you would.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm on a podcast called The View on Data. It's a bunch of women work at DBT Labs in data work, and we've put out I think 2 or 3 episodes already, and it's phenomenal. And for me, the experience is amazing because it is an opportunity to talk with and learn from these amazing women doing data work at the company I'm at, but it's very it's really open and personal. It feels like it's a community that we've built amongst ourselves, and then that stretches out to listeners. Hello, listeners, and it makes me feel less alone in being a woman in this industry.
The name of it?
Oh, it's called The View on Data. Is the name of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Chloe. So I guess I had a question for all of you here. In your careers in tech and data and beyond, have you guys ever struggled with I guess, compartmentalizing like your identity or femininity, if that makes sense? Like, do you feel like, you know, you kind of play a different self when you're in your role versus like who you are in your everyday life? And if so, what was your experience?
I might take this one first. I know I am not a panelist on this panel, but I worked for a woman named Katrina Lake at Stitch Fix for a number of years. And she is a very petite Asian woman, and she would talk very openly about her experience trying to raise funds in Silicon Valley and some of the reactions she got from VC and other. And she uses the word like almost every word, like this, like that, like whatever. And she got some feedback once where someone told her that she sounded stupid. And she was sharing this story with me, and she was like, the deck was great, the math was really good, the business value was there, like it was so clear if I choose to use like or if I choose to swear or anything like that, but I can still get my point across. Like someone is just getting distracted by that, and that's on them, that's not actually on me. And what I learned from that moment is I swear like a sailor. I'm also, in the data space, like wearing sparkles up on stage. But it really like instilled in me, like she was this very successful CEO, and at the time was the first CEO to take a company public at the valuation she did, and she fucking crushed it. And you can talk how you want to talk or look how you want to look. And in today's world, like taking up that space and doing it creates more space for others too. And so like that is a lesson I only recently learned, but I share with every single person that will listen. If there's anything else anyone would add.
I think that there is, for me, there's just such an importance in whatever you do, you need to do it confidently. And so you need to figure out how you can be true to yourself in those spaces and feel confident doing it. So I think like we often talk about shape-shifting or those sorts of things as a negative, but if that's what allows you to be confident in those spaces, I actually think it's okay. I think you need to just lean into whatever will make you show up the best version of you in that space, and that's what's most important. So it's also really important to just think about like taking what you want out of the feedback that's given to you. People will give you a lot of feedback and a lot of advice, and some of it will work for you and some of it won't. And over time, just learning like how to take the feedback that serves you and choosing to not take the feedback that doesn't serve you can be really important. So my entire career, I've always gotten the feedback that I should speak up more and take up more space in the places that I am, and simultaneously that the fact that I don't speak too often makes it really powerful when I do speak, because then people listen, because they know if Leslie's choosing to speak up, it must be important to her. So I have chosen to lean into the part of that works for me, which is speaking less and making sure people listen when I do, and not trying to be the loudest voice in the room or the person who speaks the most, because that will just never be naturally me. So I think it's important to just take feedback as a gift when it is a gift, and choose to ignore it, like Katrina, when it's not.
It's a gift you can return sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think for me, I'll just add a couple quick sentences here, like to what you said earlier about that example. But for me, as an Indian woman coming in, many years ago, back then, I had a really hard time fitting in general. So like, let alone fitting in a team or like in the tech world. I had a hard time just like fitting in, because people were constantly like commenting on my accent or the way I looked, like the dark hair. And fast forward many years, my husband is now American. So like, not in my wildest dreams I would have thought that, like how life would like evolve over time. So what Lesley said, oftentimes it's just following your gut and being confident in the decisions that you make. And then you just make a life for yourself that other people are then looking up to. So
I see a question over here.
Hello, my name is Catherine Burrow. I wanted to know how you guys handle things when like your influence, your authority, your experience is undermined, minimized, or dismissed.
Ooh, it's a loaded one. Who wants to start?
think like a lot of that, I've had some of that experience, like when we were kind of beginning our transition, looking for kind of new partners in India. I was the youngest person in the room, probably by like 10 or 15 years, the only woman as part of the team traveling together, and like probably one of 10 women I met over the course of a week of where we met like 80 people. And so I felt very like out of place there, and like I didn't have that influence. But that was kind of like all in my head. And like I realized like stepping out of that, I had the experience from like previous jobs to kind of lean back on and actually be the leader in kind of that process of kind of defining like what we were going to be doing in this new partnership. And so I kind of had to get out of my own head and just like focus on like what I could do, and just like not focus on, like, to the point, like I can't focus on other people, I can't focus on their reactions, focus on my own reaction. And if I was reacting negatively to something, I had to control that and then move forward.
I think for me, I would say that oftentimes it's focusing more on the results or the outcome that your work is producing versus if other people think that your influence is cascading throughout the organization. So like that's how I have leaned into. If I think that my work is making an impact across the board, I keep going. I'm more confident about presenting. I think sometimes in the technical roles that you're in, the work that we do is so hidden and behind the scenes. So I think it's more of that effort, to overshare, to present at the opportunities given. So I think make people aware of the work that you're doing so that undermining thing doesn't become too evident. Because if they've not seen the work, I think that's when they're more doubtful about the abilities. But if they're seeing the impact that it's creating, then I think they're more open to believing it.
I think, did you want to say something?
I was going to say something that I have done in a situation where I felt like I was having that kind of experience was I took a step back and I really looked at my work and what I was producing and honestly assessed it like, do I think this is good? And if there were places where I felt like, I could do better, I would work on improving those just for me till I got to a point where I can be like, yes, this is good work. I have done good work. I am proud of this. And that seemed to like be such an internal strength that it ended up being a lot of like water off a duck's back in situations when I felt like other people weren't seeing that. It was sort of like, that's okay, I know this is good. And I could see, much like what you just said, Pooja, I could see the influence of it happening, like going across like conversations, changes, decisions being made, and maybe there wasn't any credit coming my way, but I knew that it was because of something I'd produced, and that was a really helpful way for me to deal with that situation, because it meant that I continued to present with that like internal confidence that it wasn't gonna get me down, and I outlasted the situation. So.
I think the idea of asking yourself, like, what do I know to be true in this moment is really powerful, and leaning on that. And then anyone that is undermining you, it's a reflection of them, it's not of you. That it's easier to say than do, trust me, as someone who like feels very deeply. Okay, we are almost at time. I'm not sure if there are other questions we didn't get to. Like I said, we have a networking thing right after this, so please don't hesitate to bring them up. We'll create more space for this. I think like one takeaway I'm definitely having in this moment is that like influence is not about power. Like this was not intentional, but I don't think a single person on this stage said power once. So if anyone's AI transcribing this, don't fact check that. But I don't think so. But it really is about impact, and it's like the how. I'm also struggling, like Lesley, you said this some too, by like how us building credibility and influence, it looked different for every single one of us, and it will look different for every single one of you. And I think that goes to one of the first questions we got to, of like, that is totally okay. Success or influence does not have to look one single way. You don't have to have that voice that takes up the entire room. But from these stories, it's really about like how we move things forward, and that's really where influence starts to be built and create more momentum. We make others better. We intentionally use our voice in the way that makes sense for us in the spaces that we're in. And every person in this room, I think you all have the ability to shape what comes next in your teams, in your companies, in our industry. That's really what influence is here. Not something we wait for, but something that we create together. So the conversation does not end today. Keep building it. Keep showing up for each other in the way that you did today in this first conversation. There's a couple of resources here. We have our Slack community, #WomenInData. Please join it if you're not on it. Continue the conversation. We mentioned the podcast, too, that our very own Paige is on. Please check it out, The View on Data. It's incredible. And we have a fun networking event planned. Like I said, it is down in that, I think it's called the theater, where we had the keynote. Just around the corner. I'm getting a head nod from Miss Izzy Sparks up here. Great. There are people who will guide us if you get lost or anything. Start smaller conversations, get to know each other. Come up to me, come up to the panelists, come up to anyone in this room. Please say hi. Would love to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. Great. All right. I'll see you all there.